My name is Jeremy. I'm the project manager at Targo Consulting. We're a boutique consulting firm based just up the road on Derech Menachem Begin, near, well, this station right over here. That is our office, by the way. Fun fact, they don't tell you on the website. But anyway, so we do business plans for all different kinds of industries, whether it's mobile applications, business to consumer with physical products. It could be really anything from medical devices to, we had a couple of projects come across our desk regarding mobility scooters, things like that. We've done things for SaaS and for a lot of different fields. I mean, we've done things for applications ranging from cemetery management, for cemetery management companies, to just gaming applications for tweens and teens. Basically, our approach is what we're going to kind of go through today. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see the videos of me on our website. I have not, but we're going to go through that process in our sort of methodology for business planning, but with a focus, with a narrative for tonight. And that's really the backbone of our process. And the whole process of our business planning is built upon what potential the market presents. Now, every time we do a business plan, it starts with three major steps that we work with our, with our clients or customers, whatever you want to call them. The first of those steps is called a market review. What purpose does that serve, and what does that entail generally, right? There's a quote, I don't know if anyone's familiar, but there's a quote in the beginning of a John Steinbeck book, which goes, "The plans of mice and men often go awry. They can go wrong." Now, ideally, when you're in the business of business planning, you want to have a plan. You want to be able to move forward. So, what the market research section does is build that baseline. There are two main types of market research, market review, as we sort of like to call it, and two main purposes. Everything is sort of like a rule of two of sorts. So when we do the market review section, the two main purposes are, one, to show any potential investor, even from a macro level, that there's potential, that this product that you're trying to bring out into the market is going to give them that eventual return on their investment. Because at the end of the day, aside from having a good concept or a product that's a really winning solution, the investor wants to make sure that you don't lose the money. And the second part of that, and we're going to delve into that a little bit later, is the market review serves as the spine of the business plan, because it dictates or helps to dictate where your initial go-to-market location could be, whether that's the U.S. or here in Israel or the U.K., wherever the light guides you, so to speak. And in our processes, market research is done over the course of two kinds of compilations of information. The first of which is initial market research, which could contain anything from interviews with people in the field, surveys. Generally speaking, when we have clients that have experience in the field, they sort of work with us, helping to create a more interactive process. Either they'll talk to someone in their family or their friend group or a colleague from the army or school that's in the field that could give them some insight. Could be surveys, things like that. And the other part of the market research is called secondary market research, which is from published data, journals, benchmarking to existing platforms, or if companies are public. If they have, let's say, their financials on display, so to speak, or available online. We look at all these parts here, can help you define all of this. We're going to take this step by step. Obviously, from a macro level, you're able to see that, okay, there's potential. There's, the market is predicted to grow 10%, hopefully, over the next 5 years. But also when you're doing a business plan, one of the most important things, especially when we're trying to get investment, is to have a concept that's really, I'm just going to say it, a really kick-ass concept. Because at the end of the day, concept is going to be king. You could come to a company like ours and have a fully developed project, a whole team of developers and things like that, but without doing your homework, which is so essential for that final phase, that phase of getting that investment. We talk about plans going awry. You need to do your homework. You need to see that there's a need. A killer concept addresses a need in the market that either isn't being addressed or doesn't exist yet. So doing your homework, doing your due diligence in the market is so key for that. As I mentioned before, with sort of public companies or companies that can be used as benchmarks for building, your cash flow, or for even some of your features, or maybe there's a competitor who is this all-in-one solution, this jack of all trades, master of none, that has their tentacles in all these different aspects of the market. But then there's a niche in the market that's not covered. So while you might want to try to take what that competitor is doing and say, okay, they're doing this, and this, but we're going to do it better. What's more attractive when you sort of dig down is establishing that niche and concept and developing a particular concept, because simplicity sometimes at the end of the day is more of a winning formula. Another thing, and we're going to jump into this a little bit later, when you're trying to pick a country or a city to go into, you have to understand what's going on the ground. Are there certain laws that won't allow you to operate, let's say, a restaurant in certain places, or certain zoning in the city that won't allow you to open up a business either within the confines of a residency or in certain commercial zones, or not commercial zones? That market research can help you define solutions for what your value chain is. How do you get your product to your final consumer? So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive, shall we? Okay. So when we build the market research section, depending obviously on the product, the last section tends to be a total addressable market. And we can see from right here that the value of, say, in this case, this was a grocery platform that was supposed to help people sort of pick meals directly from supermarkets and be able to live healthier lives. So you see here that there's data on what the size of the market is in 18, and the estimated in 25, and just by having an idea of what maybe a SaaS service fee could be, they can calculate if all conditions are right, if we can secure everybody that's trying to be in this market, this is what we could attain given our main model of revenue, which would be the fee. Now sometimes that is unavailable. And look, realistically, and there are other parts to it. There's the SAM and the SOM, the serviceable addressable market and serviceable obtainable market. Said that a bit fast. Everyone catch that? Let me say that again. Okay. Going once. Now, those numbers, when we drill down to it, would give you definitely a clearer picture as to what part of the market you can realistically obtain. So I mentioned problem before, right? When you're doing your research, you can identify trends. You can identify, okay, like I said before with the all-in-one, this section of the market is not being covered right now. Or, people, this industry in total is very outdated. It needs a radical disruption. How can I fill that void and be that disruptor? And we can see that when we do the research, you can find figures like this. You can find figures of, how much our companies, in this case, this is assess, obviously assess ITOA. How much in systems failures, how much are systems failures causing even like Fortune 1000 companies year over year? Hourly, how much will an infrastructure failure cost you? Or critically. And what can my concept do, or how can I present that later on in the business plan that fixes this issue, or at least doesn't make it as costly, because certain things obviously are out of our control. Looking at competitors, looking at other benchmarks can help you define your value chain and how you get your product to the final consumer. So let's take this example here. This is a toothbrush that, it's kind of like an electric toothbrush on steroids, if I can put it that way, in the sense that it sort of is a much deeper clean. It tends to do the cleaning in about half the time. And we can see here that they have 3 methods of distribution through e-commerce, which is much more is factory to consumer, brick and mortar, your local super farm or what have you, and then through dental offices. And this sort of, we measure, what the markup is and what the total value will be when it reaches the consumer. So this is a really important one. Let's talk about regulation, because it's certainly going to be a lot of red tape, and something that in certain businesses you're going to need to address head on, even before you get to that go to market. So let's take this example here. This is a CAR T treatment. Is anyone familiar with that? Anyway, the long and the short of it is this. The CAR T treatment is effectively extracting T cells from someone and then adding on something called I'm not even going to try, the CAR, which then is added on to the T cell and then is injected back into the patient and is basically hardwired to attack any sort of antigen, any virus, cancer, generally liquid form, not a solid tumor or something like that, to try to fight the antigen. Now, something like this, you would think, especially in the United States, would have to go through the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. However, knowing some of the loopholes in there are very important to, they can help you build your cash flow and maybe even get, a flow earlier on. What I mean by that is this here, this expanded access program. What this means is that if you are familiar with some of the FDA's clinical trials and other sort of programs, that if for people with certain life-threatening illnesses that regrettably are not getting better, they could be charged for treatment as a sort of test run, so to speak, or just a way to see how effective a treatment could be. And they could be charged. So therefore, you could add those, those charges, those streams of revenue onto your cash flow before you've even gotten your FDA approval. This is where the market research, though, is incredibly important. Or I would say, aside from the potential, is one of the most important things, because generally speaking, if you don't do your homework about your competitors, and you say, oh, there's no one in the market that's doing what I'm doing, no one's going to, an investor's going to be like, this guy clearly didn't do his homework, or girl, or this lady, I'm sorry. They clearly didn't do their homework, because there are solutions out there that I know are proven, that I know are good, but why choose you over them? Why even bother switching over? So take a look at this chart here. By just doing a simple, or even better yet, a deeper dive on each of these competitors, getting some of these key matrices of information, if it's a website, their monthly traffic, if they have information that's available of how much, how much they've raised already, which level are they? Are they round A? Are they round B? Are they even pre-seed? Is there a way that you could sort of jump ahead of them? These are all things that can help you differentiate your product and establish your competitive edge. That niche we also talked about as well. By understanding the ins and outs of, even if it means downloading a rival application, just to understand the ins and outs of what your competitor is doing, every little bit helps. Especially when it comes to applications, because, and we've always told this to clients, that the product that you would maybe come to someone like us in the initial stages, in the pre-seed or the idea stage, there's a very good chance that it's going to look like something completely different once we've done all this work. Once we've, kind of sifted through all the weeds. I don't even think that's an expression. Whatever. Once we've, gone through the weeds, we've exited the forest and found everything that we can find, the product can look radically different. I mentioned two things that having a comprehensive market review can do for your business plan, at least according to our model. Some people might do it differently, but according to the way that we do things. The first thing is potential, right? Trying to understand, do I have an opportunity here? Can I go to market effectively? And the second part of that is, where do I go to the market? Right? Which we see here. This is the culmination of everything, right? Your timeline and the way that even your Excel or the way that you present it to the eventual investor, it all ends up right here. This basically is telling investors, I've done A, B, and C. This is how I plan to get things done. Go to market and develop using, the funds that you so graciously bestowed upon me. So let's get into it. So one of the first parts, when we define the business model, is the target market and the target audience. Now, the target market is, as it says, where. It's the where. Where do you want to go to market? What's the most attractive location? Where could you get, in the case maybe of an application, where's the highest concentration of potential seed users? Is it a college campus? Like I know a couple of famous examples we could think of probably off the top of our head that started on a college campus. Can anyone name me one? Facebook. Anyone? One more?
Grubhub.
What's that? Grubhub. The example I was actually fishing for, which I think is quite interesting, is with Tinder. What did they do when they started in this highly concentrated, I forget where exactly, which college, but they they did this. They had a party and said, if you want to come to this party, your entry, there's no cover charge. You just have to download this application and see how it works. The rest is history, as they say. So, when we are trying to decide a target market, it's important to know, maybe in certain cities that there's a high concentration of, like I said, college students, or if you're trying to do like a business to business, or a higher concentration of businesses in one particular area, to start smaller and to expand outward. So like in this case, we talk about a multi-destination flight platform. So what do you want to know in something like this? You want to know how many people are taking multiple destination vacations. Sorry, I realize I walked in front of it. And that can help you decide, okay, well, this country, like in this case, the main thing is the US, right? There are going to be a lot of people getting married there in a country of, in theory, in a country of 328 million people. 15% of them are going to multiple destinations. And that sort of helps you to narrow down the target audience. Now, who's your target audience? What is the target? What does that sound like to you? Who are your clientele? Who are going to be your initial seed users if you're an application, or if you're a business to business? What kind of businesses are you trying to start with? Let's say you're in, I don't know, you have a platform or for the construction industry, and you want to start small. Which aspect of the construction industry should we start to? Maybe it's a job management platform, right? Should we start with electricians and then move into plumbers or to or any sort of or cement workers, and then expand outward? Having that information, once you have identified that target market, zeroing in on that target audience is so essential, because it shows that I know exactly what I'm looking for. When we tend to benchmark to other solutions or look for how current players are doing things in the market, is to understand the unit economics of our solutions or our products. Whether that's the SaaS fee or the average lifetime that, let's say, a user is going to stay engaged with an application or stay engaged with a product. How much is it going to cost me to bring these people on, and for how much revenue? Which would be, in this case, how much value does one customer bring me? Now look, in a lot of cases, you're going to have to spend more to earn that. But by knowing what other solutions are doing, or having an idea of what costs could be associated with growing, it can help you tailor your solution to meet those needs. And then, of course, it can help you define your revenue model. You have to realize that by doing your homework or doing your research and seeing what's out there on the market, you can see that sort of your own sort of A/B testing when it comes to solutions. You can see which examples, which examples of revenue models work, which ones don't. For an application, is a freemium model better than having ads? Are people going to get sick of ads and stop using the application? Should we incentivize people to go premium by offering, let's say, like Spotify, for example, right? You have 6 skips an hour and ads whenever they feel like it. I'm sure there's a time limit. That's just what I always encountered. And it's sort of an incentive to say, okay, well, if you go premium, you can choose whatever you like. You can get as many skips as you want. And that's why they have a relatively high rate of people, joining premium. When you're starting something, you're going out on a limb. You're taking a risk, and risk is uncomfortable. So when you do the research and you take a look at these platforms, these crowdfunding platforms, and look for these solutions, you can see, okay, they've raised this amount, they've raised this amount, they've raised this amount. Now I know I've got a good product. I'd like to put that to the test. And then, of course, it all culminates with the building of the financial model, which in our process is the last step of the business planning itself. As the rest of it, I don't know if anyone who's familiar with our services, then goes into the pitch deck, and we build a one-pager, which reflects everything that we've talked about here. Reflects each part down to the wire. These are just some examples of the way that we build it. Some, breaking down of, your expenses for operating and for research and development, and your personnel costs, and how that will reflect against your revenues here. most of the market research comes into play when we do this part of the business planning process in two places, one of which is here in the revenue model. So let's say the annual licensing fee we find is $400,000 for this SaaS product. And we say, okay, great, we can then build off of that fee. The other side, where the market research comes into play, could be here in personnel, where you can benchmark to what is the market salary for someone in this field, in the online influencer field. Someone behind a company behind that. But also what the cost per acquisition is. By doing the due diligence, you could see, well, company X is spending $10 trying to get people to install their product. Therefore, it may be wise for us to adopt a similar method. Same thing goes with retention rates. How many people are going to stay on after a quarter? Now, a lot of people tend to abandon applications, 3 months after downloading it? I said bringing it onto their phone. I swear I grew up with a smartphone. Anyway, but that's where they really come into play. This goes back to the discussion we had before with the car key treatment here. So you see here that even certain things like IP, if you have a product that's going to need upkeep or need a patent or need just some sort of protection, particularly in some markets more than others, these are all things to consider when you're building this part of the plan. And that'll also help you dictate the Capex. For example, how much are computers and how much, you're going to generally, what we tend to do is do it per employee. If you're adding on extra employees, how much per employee is that going to cost? How much do office fixtures cost in a certain location, certain buildings? And then, of course, that all boils down to the budget, which is the last page of our business plans and the last page of the financials. How much money are you going to be required? Now, this is very high. This is quite unusual for most of our clients. But it's basically how much money are you going to request at the end of the day. And it all accumulates right here. And that comes to the end of our presentation. Thanks, guys.